Hello everyone, I'm Sneha. I'm on my YouTube channel Storyteller. So I was reading out to you a very interesting story. It's the story of a shipwreck sailor by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So it's based on a true event, and fiction also has been added to it to make it more interesting. Now it's a bit long story, as I have said. It will take a little more time for me to complete because I am reading out small extract from parts which are interesting and which I do feel that if I share with you will be a very good experience, because you can also be part of the story, part of the experience, what the narrator has experienced during the crisis. So I have read out a small part of it. Today I'll read out from the portion which I left in my previous video. Louis Renfrew asked for the time. It was 11:30. An hour had passed since the ship had begun to east, leaning dangerously to starboard. The order of the previous night was repeated over the loudspeaker. All personnel to the port side. Raymond Herrera and I did not move because we were already on that side. I thought about Miguel Ortega, whom I had seen on the starboard side. But almost at the same moment, I saw him get rolling past me. He bent over the port side in agony with his seasickness. At that moment, the ship tilted frightfully. He was gone. I stopped breathing. A huge wave crashed over us, and we were drenched as though we had just come out of the sea. Very slowly, the ship levered to right itself. Luis Renfrew was ashamed. Nervously, he had said, "What luck! The ship is going down and doesn't want to come back up." That was the first time I had seen Luis Renfrew look nervous. Beside me, Raymond Herrera, deep in thought, completely soaked, remained quiet. There was a moment of total silence. Then Raymond Herrera said, "When they give the order to cut the ropes to release the cargo, I will be the first one cutting them." It was 11:50. I too thought that they would order the ropes cut at any moment. That's what called lightening the deck. Radios, refrigerator, and stove would slide into the sea as soon as the order was given. When that happened, I thought I would have to go below to quarters because we had been using the refrigerator and stove to make ourselves secure on deck. Without them, the waves would have swept us away. The ship continued to fight the waves, but it was listing more all the time. Raymond Herrera rolled up a tarpaulin and covered himself with it. Another wave, bigger than the previous one, crashed over us, but now we were protected by the canvas. I put my arms over my head while the waves passed, and half a minute later, the loudspeaker barked. "They're going to give the order to cut the cargo loose," I thought, but it was a different order spoken in a calm, confident voice. "Personnel on deck, don your life jackets. Come ye." Luis Renfrew held his headphone in one hand and put on his life jacket with the other. First, I felt a great emptiness and then a profound silence, as I had after each enormous wave. I looked at Luis Renfrew, who his life jacket on had replaced his headphone. Then I closed my eyes. I could clearly hear the ticking of my watch. I listened to the ticking for approximately 1 more minute. Raymond Herrera did not move. I calculated that it must be almost 12. 2 hours to Cartagena. For a second, the ship seemed suspended in air. I started to raise my arm to look at my watch, but at that moment I could not see my arm or my watch either. I did not see the wave. I felt the ship give way completely and the cargo that was supporting me slide away. I stood up, and in a fraction of a second the water was up to my neck. Then I saw Luis Renfrew, eyes popping green and silent, trying to stay afloat, holding his headphone aloft. Then the water covered me completely, and I started to swim towards the surface. I swam upward for 1, 2, 3 seconds. I tried to reach the surface. I needed air. I was suffocating. I tried to grab hold of the cargo, but the cargo wasn't there anymore. Now there was nothing around me. When I got to the surface, I couldn't make out anything in the sea. A second later, about 100-meter away, the ship surged up between the waves, gushing water from all sides like a submarine. It was only then I realized I had fallen overboard. My first impression was that I was utterly alone in the middle of the ocean. Trying to stay afloat, I watched another wave crash against the destroyer. The ship, now about 200 meters from me, plunged into an abyss and disappeared from sight. I thought it had gone under, and a moment later, as if to confirm that what I had thought, all the crater of Mercedes that had been loaded onto the destroyer in Mobile began to surface and floated towards me one by one. I kept afloat by grabbing onto the crates of clothing, radios, refrigerator, and other household goods that bounced around willy-nilly, battered by the waves. I had no idea what was happening. A bit stunned, I took hold of one of the bobbing crates and stupidly began to contemplate the sea. It was a perfectly clear day, except that the choppy waves produced by the wind and the cargo scattered around the surface. There was no evidence of the shipwreck. Soon I began to hear shouts nearby. Through the sharp bristling of the wind, I recognized the voice of Julio Amador Carabello, the tall, well-built first warrant officer, who was yelling at someone. "Grab hold there, under the life preserver." It was as if in that instant I had awakened from a moment's deep sleep. It dawned on me that I wasn't alone in the sea. There, only a few meters away, my mates were shouting to one another and trying to stay afloat. Quickly, I began to think. I couldn't swim in just one direction. I knew we were about 50 miles from Cartagena, but I was not yet frightened. For a moment, I thought I could hold on to the crate indefinitely until help arrived. It was reassuring to know that all around me, other sailors were in the same predicament. That was when I saw the raft. There were two life rafts about 7 meters apart. They appeared unexpectedly on the crest of a wave near where my mates were calling out. It seemed odd that none of them could reach the life rafts. In an instant, one of the rafts disappeared from view. I could not decide whether to risk swimming towards the one or stay safely anchored to my crate. But before I had time to decide, I found myself swimming towards the one I could see, which was moving farther away from me. I swam for about 3 minutes. I lost sight of the raft momentarily, but I was careful not to lose my bearing. Suddenly, a raft wave pushed the raft alongside me. It was huge, white, and empty. I struggled to grab the rigging and jump aboard. I made it on the third try. Once on the raft, painting, beamed by the wind, immobilized and freezing, I found it hard to sit up. Then I saw 3 of my mates near the raft, trying to reach it. So in my next video, I'm going to read the next part of this story. Till then, keep listening to my storytelling, and the previous part of this story is there. The links of those previous parts is there in the description box below. So you can click on those links and listen to it. And you can also visit my YouTube channel, Storyteller. You will get the links of all the previous videos of mine. So like, share, and subscribe to my channel.